putting together a video rather than a podcast talking about David Gold's interview yesterday with the West Ham Way. A very enlightening podcast that he done with those boys. They got some really good questions in. But the reason I feel the need to do this video is I felt Gold's answers were a bit disingenuous, and to perhaps prove that, I need to use pictures that I've kept over the years to perhaps show that David Gold was not being correct in what he was saying. Gold states that he wasn't always for the move. So basically, at times he felt that it wasn't right, possibly, because that's the way I see it, if he wasn't always for the move.
When I first considered the idea of moving from Upton Park, I really didn't want to go.
But the weird thing about that is there's no evidence to back that up. Gold, on numerous occasions, has said that, but at no point did he ever say, I wasn't for the move. And it's bailed out at the fact that day one, they bought the club. The plan was to move to Olympic Stadium, which they wanted to rent and not own. That was day one. January the 19th, 2010, they bought the club. And David Sullivan and David Gold are sitting together, and Sullivan says the plan is to move to Olympic Stadium.
I would say now it's a major part of our strategy that West Ham moved to the Olympic Stadium.
Now, if the fact that they've said it that day meant that before they bought the club, they must have thought about it and looked into it and realised it was a goer. So at what point was David Gold against the move? It's in. David Gold claims, we always knew there'd be a problem. Now, I think the problem with David saying that is there is no evidence to back that claim up, especially when you look at what the club said during the period between 2010 and 2015-16 in regards to stadium. It was always world-class stadium.
World-class stadium with a world-class team.
The sightline's going to be fantastic. No seat further away than Wembley. It's going to be a West Ham stadium. It's going to look and feel like a West Ham stadium. Now, I sat through meetings at the SAB for 3 or 4 years. The stadium was discussed virtually every meeting, and at no point was the word problem, or there was going to be a problem, ever used. So again, Dave, where is the evidence to show that you always knew there's a problem? Because for me, your words are cheap, and you're being very disingenuous, trying to get people to support your side, to try and allay fears, when actually there's no evidence to back that up. So show me the evidence and I'll change my mind. But as far as I know, and as far as I can find, and I've looked, there is no evidence to prove the club said they knew. Now, if they did know, and they carried on saying world-class stadium and everything's going to be all right, it's going to be the best stadium in the world, category 4 UEFA, as they like to point out. But if they said all that while in the background, we knew there would be a problem, then at best they seek economical with the truth, and at worst it's an outright lie. "18 minutes in, David then comes out with what in my regards is a strange thing to say, but one that the club's always said, is that it was not feasible to stay at Upton Park. Now, apparently the club looked into it and it just wasn't possible. But the facts are, and these are facts, the club have never produced any feasibility study that they ever did on rebuilding the East End. If we bear in mind that on day one, they walked in and said they were going to move the club. So when did the feasibility study take place? Now, they put out that there were problems. Now, let's remember that the East End was supposed to have been done around the 2003-2004, but that obviously, because of the relegation, got stopped. The new West End was built, and the pitch got moved away from the East End, creating the gap between the chicken run and the pitch. Now, that gap was created for the new East Stand to go in. The club claimed that there was always a claim put out that the flats behind the stand would block out light, so you couldn't go higher, so that would create difficulty. But as we can see now that the flats being built on what was the East Stand are actually going to be higher than the flats behind, so why aren't they blocking out the light? Secondly, the bus garage caused a problem. Well, as we know, before we moved out, the bus garage was closed down and sold off, which is to be built on, which is now going ahead. New flats, more flats being built in the area. So where is the feasibility study that the club did? Because again, in SAB meetings, none of this was ever produced. I don't believe there ever was. There is no proof that the club ever did any feasibility study whatsoever. So again, Dave, disingenuous. Another disingenuous fact you're using. So 20 minutes in, Dave's now questioned regarding the famous comment where he stood in front of the West Stand at the bowling with BBC journalist Chris Legg from Late Kickoff and said,
"There is no way that we can go to the Olympic Stadium unless our seats are in a similar distance than they are now." What is that? That's
20 yards, I guess.
20 yards. We can't be more than that.
Now, Dave has said that he was generalising when he said that. But we won't go is not generalising. That's a statement of fact. Now, as it turns out, the seats were not in a similar distance. And the problem is that from day one of any drawings drawn up, conversion, the seats were never going to be in a similar distance. And the club would have known that. Now, David claims that there was a cock-up with the architect's drawings, that they did something and they got given duff information. But the club have never shown any proof to show that. The facts that we know are, and these are facts, is that in 2010, when the first bid was drawn up and put together, there was going to be no retractable seating. So the seats were going to be even further back than what they are now, a bigger gap. So it wasn't till the bid collapsed and then it was redone and repackaged at the end of 2012, 2013, and that they could come out and go, right, we've got retractable seating, which pushed the seats further forward. Now, even though the seats are further forward, they're still not in the same distance as what David was saying. So I don't get where David says he was given duff information by architects, because there is no proof to that whatsoever. All the architectural drawings showed that the seats were always going to be further away. So there was no duff information, Dave. And again, you're being disingenuous with what you say. But one thing we're doing is the fact that when you say you're generalising, we will not go. It's not generalising. That's a statement of fact. So that, Dave, I'm afraid, I know you don't like being called a liar. I think you've told a porcupine there, my friend. About the retractable seat and the fact that it don't retract. It's not the club's problem. Now, this is where I agree with Dave. That's not the club's problem. The seats, or the retractable seating as it was supposed to be, but removable seating as is now, is fun enough in exactly the correct position as all the architect's drawings have shown. I'm going to put some up so you can see what I'm talking about. I've got the architect's drawings back from 2013, 2014. I actually spent time in the OLDC offices checking out the sizes and the distance, because they wouldn't give us a copy. We did a couple of us did freedom of information, and they wouldn't give us a copy, but they said we could view the folder because it was a public folder, but you had to go to their offices. So we did that, and I'll put images up to show you that that's what we did. So Dave is right when he says the retractable seating does not matter one iota to West Ham. It's not their problem. If it takes an hour, 10 hours, a day or a week to move, it's not West Ham's problem, as long as they're in position during the football season. Now, the funny thing about that is, though, is we go back to what I said previously. where Dave said, "Oh, we didn't know about the seating distances, we were misled." Well, that can't be right, Dave, because the architect's drawings show the distances, and they were always going to be that way. There was the two bids, one with no seating, so the seats were further away, and one with the seating pushed forward. Again, Dave, I think you are being disingenuous with the truth. Next in the interview, Dave then claimed that the ills of the stadium are down to athletics being there, and that if the athletics weren't there, then there would be no problem. Now, this is probably correct, because obviously the problems with the stadium is the cost of moving the seating. The retractable seating failed, the company went bankrupt, and they're left with a bit of a pig's ear and a mess. But the strange comment about that is, it's an athletic stadium that accommodates football. It's not a football stadium that accommodates athletics. So to actually complain that athletics are causing a problem when you're actually in an athletic stadium, again, is blame shifting, and I think is being disingenuous. They always knew they were going into an athletic stadium, and that it was designed for athletics predominantly, and football was a shoo-in. So I'm sorry, Dave, you can't complain and try and shift the blame onto athletics. Now, it may be better if athletics moved out. We don't know whether, but it seems a bit strange that the Olympics were given to West Ham. Oh, sorry. The Olympics were given to London off of the back of the rubbish spattered by Sebastian Coe, but part of it was legacy. So to then rip that up and throw it away seems a bit poor, really, for me. But then again, I'm not an athletics fan, so I couldn't give a monkeys about athletics. So 28 minutes in, and Dave claims that, or admits that there were areas that the club failed in, which is all well and good saying that. But the problem you got is we've got Karen Brady maintaining to this day it was the best migration ever. So what I see is we've got a classic of left hand and right hand not actually talking to each other or getting the communication. It's quite possible that happened here because the club never knew David Gold was doing that interview, so they couldn't give him the lines to spin. So fair play to Dave for coming out and doing the interview without telling the club first, and fair play, I suppose, to admit it. But the problem is, for me, the words are too cheap because it's too late. You only get one chance to get it right, and you got it wrong. And the apologies are hollow, in my opinion. Next up, Dave's asked a really good question. If you could turn the clock back, would you still move? I think here he naturally says that going back to 2010, they would still probably do the same again. The strange thing, he said he couldn't make an argument not to go. Well, I think I could probably make a good argument, and hopefully I'm putting up a few fair reasons why I've long believed that the club shouldn't go. I think it's quite evident. The problems we've got there, unfortunately, they managed to market the move in such a way that the fans bought into a dream that I always said they couldn't deliver. And I think with the accounts coming out this week proving they cannot deliver. Apparently as well, Dave said that there was a time when he never wanted to go, that he never wanted to move to Olympic Stadium. The problem for me is, again, as I said earlier, that we've never seen when that time was. But I think I've narrowed it down to between 1993 and 2010, when he owned Birmingham City. Because he didn't want to go to the Olympic Stadium when he owned Birmingham, because obviously they weren't in London. The funny thing about it is that they twice tried to move Birmingham City into multi-purpose rented stadiums where they wanted to sell St Andrews and move into new complexes that would have been built if Birmingham had been awarded the Commonwealth Games. Manchester won on one time, so Birmingham missed out, and Man City got the new stadium, and Birmingham City got St Andrews. I suppose when you look at the two clubs, perhaps you could argue a case that Birmingham really did lose out. But the problem is that when you look at the deal that they were doing, It was virtually the same deal that they'd done with West Ham. It's almost as if when they bought West Ham, they had the blueprint of the deal already done, because they tried it twice at Birmingham City but failed because Birmingham never got the awards of the stadium. Now, if Birmingham had been awarded the stadium, my guess is they wouldn't have turned up at West Ham United. They'd have probably stayed at Birmingham and seen it through till they got their new stadium, then sold. Of course, that's all me surmising, because Birmingham didn't get the stadiums. They had to stay at St Andrews, and the Birmingham City fans had enough of the lies and the crap, apparently, and managed to drive them out. "30 minutes in, and Dave Walker asks a really good question here, which is to tell us why the stadium is so good. The best that DG could come up with was because we fill it every week, because every game's a sellout, and 56,000 fans packing that stadium, 57,000 fans, can't be wrong. The problem with that is that the amount of empty seats every game tells a different story. That obviously that there's a lot of fans not turning up for whatever reason. Perhaps they are disappointed. And it's almost as if he's blind to that fact that some games there's 10,000 empty seats. People have done freedom of information requests because obviously the attendance figures put out are the tickets sold. And what you've got to bear in mind that there's 52,000 season ticket holders, so they automatically get counted as being in the ground. The away allocation gets sold out, that's 3,000, that's 55,000, so they're automatically counted. And then you've got the pick-up from the members and the general sale. So for that excuse, if that's the best he can come up with, that's really poor, to be honest, and perhaps highlights why many of the fans feel the way they do. Okay, that's me done for now on the stadium. Next interview moved on to the financials, which I'm sure a lot of people were interested in, but I'm not an accountant, so it bores the crap out of me. I'm not good with figures. And at the end of the day, I think we all know that the club made a record profit and they haven't spent it. So we can all make our own judgments about that. There's not really anything that I can add to that. So thanks for now.